global derivative market. This session going to deliver by my colleague, Ms. P.B. Saranya. It's my pleasure to introduce ma'am to all the participants, especially in this forum. Mrs. P.B. Saranya is currently working as Assistant Professor at GRGSMS, PhD at Christopher College for Women, Coimbatore. She has around 10 years of experience of teaching in management and 3 years of experience in the financial planning and consulting. To her credential, she has about 12 publications in Indian and international reported indexed journal. She has presented papers at various international conferences, and she is also an alumna of GRG School of Management Studies. With this small notes, on behalf of the team, on behalf of the participant, I welcome you, ma'am, for delivering this session, Global Derivative Market. Thank you. Now the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the kind words. So good morning once again. So today's session we'll be going to discuss about the global derivative market, the scenario, the history and the size of the derivative market, and we will also touch upon the derivative instruments, the underlying assets on which these instruments have been developed, and also a small brief intro to the financial markets. Let me share my screen. Hope you all can see my screen.
Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so let us have a brief introduction about the financial markets. All of us, majority of us are aware about what is a market or what is a financial market or the role of financial market. Brief introduction here. The reason why we are discussing about financial market is derivative as a market. If you look at derivative instrument, it is also a component of the financial market, which is responsible for measuring the performance of the economy. That is why we are also talking about the financial markets. So as we all know, financial market is a place where you buy and sell financial assets, or the place where you exchange financial asset. What is a financial asset? An asset which has a financial claim. Let us take an example of equity shares or bond. If you look at an equity or a bond, we have got a financial claim. Though we don't own a real asset. That is like, it is not tangible, but still we have a financial claim. So we call such assets as financial assets, and the market where we buy and sell or where we trade is generally called as the financial market. Basically, the function of a financial market is to mobilize savings. So from all small individual investors to big corporate investor or institutional investors, the purpose of financial market is to mobilize that saving, bring people together, and from the savings it develops a huge corpus. So capital is created, and this capital is again utilized by institutions and industries, and wherein by it leads to economic development. This is how the financial market functions. That is why we always say, to measure the performance of an economy, financial market is very vital. When a market is active, when there is more amount of cash flow in the market, financial market, it means that the economy is flourishing. Only when there is more amount of surplus money coming into the market, the corpus is getting developed, the capital is created. As a result of capital creation, it is again transferred to people who are in need, that is borrowers. From the borrowers, the industries get flourished. As a result of the industries flourish, the economy also flourishes. This is the whole perspective of financial markets, and this is why we consider financial markets as an important component. So when we say financial market, majority of us, relate financial markets to the equity market, that is the stock market. The moment the term financial market is said, whether do we really understand what are the other instruments, or whether do we really look into the other instruments, the moment we hear the term financial market, immediately what strikes our mind is the stock market or the equity market, the place or the platform platform where you buy and sell shares or equity instruments. That is what something which comes to our mind. But does financial markets only deal with equity instruments? No. Financial markets have a broader perspective. Financial markets are still wider with n number of financial instruments. Almost there are n number of financial instruments which doesn't have greater significance like your equity market or the stock market. This is the basics of the market. So let us try to understand how financial markets are classified. Many of us, since I know most of the participants are from finance background, you would have understood the classification. You would have read this classification or structure of financial market, where market is classified into the primary market and the secondary market, or you can call it as money market and capital market. Apart from this, what are the other components of these markets? Let us try to understand that. So the major classification, the financial markets is broadly classified into two major markets. One is the money market, the other is the capital market. So when I say money market, generally a market where you buy and sell, where you trade with short-term assets. Assets in the sense all are financial assets, but still the nature, the time frame, the time to maturity for an asset in the money market is always less than a year. Whereas in case of a capital market, the time to maturity is still higher. Though equities you buy and sell in the capital market, but still we consider it as a long-term asset because the purpose of issuing equity share is for a long-run perspective. So if you look at the money market, there are instruments like commercial papers, bill of exchange or commercial bills, certificate of deposits, you have treasury bills. All these are some instruments which are widely used in order to borrow funds by institutional investors to borrow funds from this market. So generally these instruments have a maturity which is less than a year, so we generally consider it as a money market instrument. So when it comes to capital market, most of the capital market instruments are for long run perspective. You look at bonds, shares, which has a maturity period more than a year. So generally long run in finance generally means that we have it for a more than a year. That is why we call them as long-term market, or we use it as we say capital market is a marketplace for long-term instruments. So apart from this, if you look at the capital market classification, either you can classify capital markets as primary market or secondary market, or you can even call it as stock market and bond market. Again, when it comes to the physical existence, does this market have a physical existence? If you have a daily market or a vegetable market, there is an area where all the vegetable vendors come together and all the buyers go there, they buy whatever is required. Do you have such existence for these markets? No, we don't have physical existence for these markets. When you say money market or capital market, there are no marketplaces which exist in the name of money or capital market, but there are financial institutions which intermediate the function of a money market and a capital market, and those are called as the marketplaces. So when it comes to capital market, the capital market can be further classified into primary and secondary, where primary market is basically for new issue. When somebody wants to make a new issue, when somebody wants to freshly have access to borrowed funds, they approach through the primary market, where all your initial public offerings happens in the primary market. So when I say secondary market, generally secondary market refers to the place where you trade, buy and sell any instrument which is newly issued or freshly issued in the primary market. It comes to the secondary market for trading purposes. So the buying and selling activity of an issued instrument happens in the secondary market. Or otherwise, the capital market can also be classified as stock market, because primary and secondary activity happens through the stock exchanges. The popular intermediary is the stock exchange. That is the only reason why when the name financial market, the term financial market is used, immediately people associate it with the equity market or the stock market. The reason is because stock market or the stock exchanges are one primary platform through which the all the transactions happen, be it a primary market activity or be it a secondary market activity. Everything happens through this intermediary. So generally people associate. So when I say stock market, it is a marketplace where you buy and sell equity shares. Equity instruments are bought and sold, dealt in this particular market. Again, bond market. We all know bonds are issued for capital long run capital investment purposes. where bonds generally have a long-term maturity. Time to maturity for bonds always more than a year. Many a times it is 10 years, 15 years. It is you will never see bonds with less than 3 years maturity. So bonds generally have a long run maturity. The place where you buy and trade with bonds, again we call it as bond market. So again I'm repeating the existence. When you say debt market or bond market, we call the bond market also as debt market. When you ask me, is there any physical existence for this debt market? No, there is no physical market which is existing. All these markets operate only through the intermediaries, and because of the presence of these intermediaries, each is called as a separate market. Okay, I will go a little slow. There is a comment to be a little bit slow. Yes, I will. If my audio is not clear, please unmute and let me know so that I will be aware of it. So coming to the other
ma'am, excuse me, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, there is little echo, and in between there was, your voice was breaking. Twice there was, break in your voice.
Okay, ma'am. So now I've changed the place. I'm sitting in the cabin, usual place where I used to take all my classes. I haven't heard any comment of echo. Ma'am, let me try it with my earphones. Maybe it is.
I don't know. Ma'am, I could be wrong. If there is any internet issue from my side, then it could be wrong. Probably the other speaker, the other participants can tell. If it is a problem from my side, then I take back my words.
No problem.
I do not know. No, I do not know. I don't want to disturb the session, so I'm just telling.
Ma'am, no problem.
Excuse me, ma'am. Pardon, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, there is a break in your voice. It's not clear.
Okay, ma'am. Okay. Thank you so much for your information, ma'am. Is it clear now?
Yes, okay, it's clear.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Can you start from the previous slide, ma'am? Actually, there was some problem with the previous slide. The voice.
Okay, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. I will start from the previous slide. So when we say the capital market shall be further classified into primary market or secondary market, or you can classify the capital market as bond market or stock market. So when I say primary market, it is a market where it is fresh issues are made. Anybody who wants to have access for fresh capital, they generally make use of the primary market, where they float their new issues. The instruments are newly issued in this particular market. When it comes to the secondary market, the market where you buy and sell newly issued instruments. So once the instrument is issued in the primary market, further for buying and selling, further for trading, it comes to the secondary market. I hope I'm clear now. My audio is clear. Shall I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. So again, you can see there is another classification. You can classify the capital market either as stock market and bond market. So generally, why people, the moment we say financial market, why do they associate it with the equities? Because the most of the times we keep hearing this market called stock market. Something happening with the stock market. This is the term which is getting, which is heard day in and day out. We don't hear about primary market. We don't hear about secondary market. We don't hear about bond market. But the quite often term which is heard, by most of us is stock market. That is why the moment the term financial market come into, we associate it with the stock market. Stock market is nothing but the place or a marketplace where you buy and sell equity instruments or equity shares. You can ask me, is there a place called primary market in existence? No, we don't have a marketplace called primary market, but it is all through the intermediaries. We have a number of financial institutions or intermediaries who act as the marketplace for these activities. So the most popular marketplace is nothing but the stock exchange. You have the stock exchange. In India, you have the Bombay and the National Stock Exchange, popular exchanges, which are the platforms which provide a space for all these trading activities. So the buying and selling of these financial assets happens through those exchanges. So bond market, it can also be called as a debt market. It's a place where you buy and sell long-term debt instruments or bonds. So generally bonds have a longer maturity when it is when compared with the money market. Bonds have a maturity which is more than a year. So we can also call it as a debt market. Again, coming to a debt market, is it traded separately? Again, it is again happening through the intermediaries. We don't have a separate intermediary for the bond market. Coming to the other classifications, we have spot market. You can ask me what is a spot market. Spot market is basically a cash market where all the dealings and the settlement happen immediately after the trade. Let us assume there is a buyer and the seller. The buyer agrees to buy 100 kgs of wheat from the seller, and the seller agrees to sell 100 kgs of wheat to the buyer at a fixed price of rupees 100 per kg of wheat. Immediately, the day when the trade is entered, the payment is also made by, if the buyer agrees for the price quoted by the seller, the buyer pays the price and the seller delivers the good. So settlement and delivery of goods happen immediately after the trade in the stock market. Your stock market, that is the place where you buy and sell your shares. That is through exchanges. It is an example for the stock market, because the moment your order is executed, you're supposed to make a payment. If you are planning to buy, you are supposed to make a payment. And as you make the payment, your settlement also happens. That is, delivery of shares also happen. Okay, so coming to the derivatives market. The next one is the derivative market. It is a place where you buy and sell derivative instruments. We will be discussing about what are derivative instruments in the future slides. So derivative instruments, when you trade on this derivative instruments, the place which allows you to trade with the derivative instruments, we generally call it as the derivative market. Then you have the over-the-counter market. You have the popular exchange, over-the-counter exchange of India, OTCEI, which is the marketplace through which the trading activity happens. So what is the bigger difference? It is not an organized platform like the stock market, but it still has its own regulations in trading activities, where it is a market where people, it is called as a dealer's market, where two parties who are willing to exchange their goods or exchange their assets get into this particular market. We'll be discussing about OTCEI in the future sessions. Coming to the other two markets, one is the foreign exchange market and commodity market. The foreign exchange market is the market for exchange of currencies, foreign exchange currencies. So this again is a part of the derivative market. Foreign exchange market is not a separate market, because majority of the foreign exchange trade happens through derivative instruments. So foreign exchange market is also a part of the derivative market, but still we have foreign exchange market also a separate classification. Coming to commodity market where contracts are traded, where the contracts has the commodity as an underlying asset. When a commodity is assumed as an underlying asset and that commodity is getting traded, we generally call it as the commodity market. So it is not, commodity transactions can also happen in the spot market, but commodity market on the whole generally deals with contracts which are derived from the commodities. So now we will try to understand what are derivatives. So coming to a derivative, derivatives and financial asset. So why is the name derivative given to this particular financial asset? The reason why the name derivative is given is because it derives its value from an other asset. So the value of an instrument, when it is derived from another underlying asset, we generally call that instrument as derivative instrument. It is derived its value from another asset. Let us assume a small example that milk is there, curd is there. Where is the price of curd derived from? Can any one of you unmute and talk? How is the price of curd derived? Any one of you, please unmute and answer. How is the price of curd derived?
Ma'am, by considering the price of milk.
Yes, thank you so much. Absolutely right. So, when it comes to the price of milk, the outcome, that is the result, the product which is derived is curd from milk, the derived product gets its price from the price of milk. So, whenever there is a fluctuation in milk, there will be a definite fluctuation in the price of curd. So, when the price of milk increases, you can see a considerable increase in price of curd too, because curd is derived from milk. Similarly, when I say a derivative, derivative is an instrument which derives its value from an other underlying asset or from an underlying asset. So let us assume in the same example, milk is an underlying asset, curd is a derivative which assumes its value from the price of milk. So derivatives are basically contracts which are between two parties. There are always two parties for any contract. One is the buyer and the other is the seller. So it is a contract or an agreement between two parties. The agreement is basically on an underlying asset. It is to exchange the underlying asset at a predetermined price on a future date. So it's an contract between two parties who decide to exchange an asset. The underlying asset will determine the value of that particular contract, because I told you derivatives are contracts which derive its value from an underlying asset. So this underlying asset, based on the asset, the contract value is derived. So the person, the buyer and the seller, the buyer agrees to buy certain quantity of the underlying asset at a specified or a predetermined price on a future date. Generally, the seller also agrees to deliver the certain amount of goods demanded by the buyer at the price offered by the buyer on a specified date. This is the basically, or you can call it as a definition or an explanation in the layman terms for derivatives. If you look at the recent years, there is a massive growth in the amount of derivative trading which is happening, or the number of contracts which are traded in the derivative market, which we'll be discussing in the future slides when we look at the size of the derivatives market. Let us understand the basic types in derivatives. Derivatives can be broadly classified into forwards, futures, options, and swaps. All are contracts. There is no disagreement. All the four types of derivatives or contracts whose value is determined by the underlying asset on which this contract is entered. But each contract is different from its nature. Let us understand what is a forward. A forward is a contract which is entered between two parties, a buyer and a seller, who agrees to buy or sell a certain underlying asset at a specified price on a future date. Forward again is a contract between two parties who agree to buy or sell an asset at a predetermined price on a future date. So when both contracts have the same meaning or a definition, what is the difference between a forward and a future? So forward is a custom-made contract. It's a tailor-made contract. As the buyer and the seller agrees, the contract is designed. It doesn't have a fixed maturity period. It doesn't say on this date it has to get settled. The buyer and the seller can decide upon the maturity date of the contract. They can decide upon the size of the contract. They can decide upon the underlying asset. So it's a tailor-made contract between the parties. Whereas in case of a future, it is a standard contract which is traded through an official exchange, that is the stock exchanges. So futures are standardized contracts which are traded through official exchanges, that is stock exchanges, and the size of the contract and the maturity period is predetermined. It is already fixed by the exchange. That is the major difference between forward and future. You can ask me where the forward contracts are traded. Over-the-counter market is a place where forward contracts are basically traded. So when it comes to future contracts and forward contracts, future contracts have an intermediary, and the intermediary, the person who acts as an intermediary, is nothing but the stock exchange. Whereas in case of forward contracts, there are two intermediaries. This is the basic difference between a forward contract and a future contract. When it comes to settlement period, as I told you, forwards are tailor-made. The maturity date is decided by the buyer and the seller, whereas in case of future, it is daily settlement. Every day, at the end of every day, settlement happens in futures. During day 3, we'll be having a detailed session on how future settlements are happening. So that time we will understand this in a more detailed manner. Now I'll move on to options. As I told you, all these are basically contracts. So again, option is also a contract between two parties for exchanging goods at a predetermined price on future date. But option has a difference. The name option itself conveys a meaning. It says one party, that is when there are two parties, one party has an obligation and the other third party has an option. This is the difference, key difference between a future and an option. Again, options are also standard contracts, standardized contracts traded through exchanges. But options, the name option is itself says one party has the option, other party has the obligation. Whereas in case of future and forwards, both parties have obligations, not options. So what is the option? What is the difference here? So one person has the right to do an activity, the other person has the obligation to do that activity. So let us assume there is a buyer and a seller. The buyer agrees to buy 100 kgs of meat from the seller at the predetermined price on a future date. So the price is decided as 100 rupees per kg. On the date of the maturity will be, let us assume today it is 7th December, let us assume 7th of January. Here, when I become an option holder, as a buyer, if I become an option holder, I get the right to buy and the seller becomes an obligator. So when I get the right to buy, it is left to me whether to execute the contract or not execute the contract on the date of expiry. That is on 7th January, I can decide whether to execute the contract, whether to buy or not to buy. So what does this option holder do? An option holder pays a premium called option premium for getting into a contract, for getting this privilege of being getting the choice of whether executing or not executing the contract. Whereas the obligator, if the option holder, that is if the person who has the right to execute the contract says yes, we have to execute the contract, the seller is an obligator, he has to agree to the conditions. If the buyer says no, we are not executing the contract, the seller is compensated for the financial loss. That is why the premium is paid. The option premium ensures that the option holder has the right privilege of either executing or not executing the contract. So one party is the choice maker, one party has a choice, the other party becomes the obligator. Whereas in case of swap, what is a swap? Swaps are again something similar to forwards. It is contracts between parties to exchange the cash flow. Generally, swap contracts are more widely used for exchange of foreign currencies and interest rates. So suppose if I'm paying a fixed interest rate and I want to switch over to floating interest rate. Person who's paying fixed floating rate and he is interested to switch to fixed rate. So what I do, interest rate swap happens. I exchange my cash flow with the other person, where the other person will be exchanging he will exchange his cash flow with me. So generally swaps are for exchange of cash flows. Majority of the swap contracts are for interest rates and currencies. There are other two different swap contracts which are being in use in the recent years. One is the credit default swaps, or we can call this credit swaps. The other is commodity swaps. So swap contracts on commodities and hedge or facilitate against the credit risk. Credit risk means a borrower becoming a defaulter. That is generally called as credit risk. In order to avoid credit risk or in order to reduce the quantum of credit risk, credit derivatives are also in use. If you look at Indian market, credit derivatives are not that popular, but if you look at the US market, since 1990s itself, the credit derivatives are also very popular. The first credit derivative was introduced by JP Morgan. So they were instrumental in introducing credit derivatives. So credit default swaps are also one of the most widely traded instruments across the globe, but not that popular in India. So coming to the underlying assets, when I say contracts, these contracts assume their value
Hello?
based on an yes, sir.
Ma'am, I have a small question. Can I ask, or I should ask after the session?
At the end of the session, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Sure.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I will take up all the questions at the end. Thank you, sir. So there are set of underlying assets from which these contracts are entered, or based on these underlying assets only the contracts are generally developed. So one such important underlying asset is the commodity. So if you look at the history of derivative contracts were brought into existence only with the lieu of fluctuating prices in the agricultural commodity demand. So there was a huge demand and supply uncertainty in agricultural products, wherein the rise of derivative contracts came into existence. The first was commodity derivatives. Later, it added on where other commodities like metal, your bullion, gold and silver started to enter into this particular market. Also, your commodities, there are a wide range of commodities, which the list of commodities on which you can trade is issued by SEBI, and the exchanges, the commodity exchanges identify few commodities on which they are interested to trade, and the trading, the contract on those commodities are traded in the commodity exchanges. So commodity is an underlying asset. So it can be a metal, like it can be an energy based commodity, it can be a metal based commodity, it can be an agriculture based commodity, or it can be even bullion. So commodities are of different types. Then it is equity. So your equity is, and the index is, you call it as financial derivatives. Commodities are separately called as commodity derivatives, whereas your equities and indexes, all these come under your financial derivatives category. So equity shares, when the contract is entered, equity shares as an underlying asset of a particular company as an underlying asset, then we call it as equity derivatives. Likewise, index. If you have an index as the underlying asset, the index can be Nifty 50 or Bank Nifty or IT. So if you have the index as an underlying asset, then we call it as index derivatives. So when I say underlying asset, commodity can be underlying asset, equity can be an underlying asset, index can be an underlying asset, interest rate, I told you swap contracts, or majority of the swap contracts are on interest rates and currencies. So foreign exchange currencies, forex, interest rates can also be an instrument. Likewise, your bonds, what are issued, can also be an underlying asset. So the major underlying assets are commodity, equity, index, interest rates, currencies, and bonds. Coming to the risk, major risk factors associated with the common risk factors associated with the derivative instruments. First is the counterparty risk. As I told you, every contract has two parties. If one party defaults, that is generally called as counterparty risk. That is one common risk which is felt in all the derivative instruments. When you look at the amount of risk when it compared to forwards and future, forwards are highly risky, prone to more amount of counterparty risk when compared to futures, because futures are standardized and they are traded through exchanges. Exchange is an intermediary, so the quantum of risk is slightly minimized when compared to the forwards. Then you have price risk. Since these instruments, some of these instruments are traded through exchanges, there is no clarity on how these instruments are priced. Yes, the contracts assume its price from the underlying asset, but still, what is the pricing mechanism? How these contracts are priced? As a layman, as an investor, doesn't have major clear idea about the price. There comes the price risk which is associated with this particular instrument. Then you have agency risk, because majority of the derivative contracts have a relationship called principal and agent, two parties, principal and agent, where the principal's interest is different, agent's idea is different. So the idea conflict will lead to agency risk. Finally, you have systematic risk. Systematic risk is the market risk. Majority of the people who deal with derivative instruments are institutional investors. If you look at institutional investors who are dealing with derivative instruments, they have source of fund from one institution, and that source again invested into derivative market. In such cases, what happens if they fail in the derivative market, automatically that failure gets transferred to the other institutions. If you look at, big banks like Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley, if they use the funds which are raised from the public for derivative instruments, automatically if there is a problem with the derivative market, if the derivative market, that is going to be affect their other institutions. So that is generally called as systematic risk. Other commonly used terms, we have long and short position. When you take the buyer's side, we generally call it as long position, and when you take the seller's side, we call it as short position. Again, there are two different types of options. When I say options, there are two types. One is call option, the other is put option. Call means claiming having the right to buy. Put means having the right to sell. So I told you option contracts, there will be always two parties. One party is an obligator, the other party is an option holder. That is, they have the right. So if I have the right to buy, it means I hold the call option. If I have the right to sell, it means I have a put option. Again, every option, be it call or put, they have two things, two positions. One is the long position, the other is the short position. Being at the buyer side, it means you are on the long position. If you are on the seller side, it is the short position. Basically, these two terms are for all derivative instruments. Then you have two terms which are commonly used: expiration and settlement. Basically, the term expiry was more associated with option contracts, not with forwards and futures, whereas settlement is the commonly used term for forwards and futures and swap contracts. But we don't literally differentiate settlement and expiry. We say time to expire, time the maturity date, or settlement date. For all the contracts, these two terms are widely used. But the term expiration was associated with option contracts earlier when it was introduced. Settlement, the date of settlement or the date of maturity, was more associated with forwards and future contracts. Then you have another common person called market maker in all these markets. It is a party who buys as well as sell and financial assets. Because when you enter this particular market, it is very difficult for us to find a buyer. If I want to buy something, I will find it very difficult to identify a seller who is willing to sell. At the same time, if I want to sell this financial asset, it is again a question: will I get a buyer for my asset? So market maker is a person who is willing to buy as well as sell. So he buys from one individual and sells it to another individual. So this is the role of a market maker in this particular market. Then you always have two prices: bid price and the ask price. The maximum price offered by a buyer, that is the selling, the price at which the buyer is willing to buy. The maximum price I can give for an asset is called the bid price, and the minimum price expected when I sell an asset, or the minimum price which you are expected to buy, is called as the ask price. So generally you have two different prices. One is the bid price, the other is bid price is the maximum price and ask price is the minimum price. The difference between bid and ask is called as spread. And you have exercise price and strike price. Generally, exercise price to strike price is none other than the price at which an asset is bought and sold. So both exercise and strike prices. So coming to the history of derivatives, looking at ancient history of derivatives, derivative instrument is not something which is new, or it didn't have its origin 30 years back. It had its origin during 8000 BC. When I say 8000 BC, during that time we didn't have papers or pen to write an agreement. These were the coins were imprinted, clay molded coins were imprinted. Clay coins were imprinted, and those imprinted coins were called as envelopes. These envelopes had a settlement date, and these envelopes were used as a promise by the counterparty to deliver a particular quantity of goods to the buyer. So the clay coin was molded into an envelope with the imprinting of the settlement date. That was the first derivative which was introduced, which happened during the 8000 BC. Later, if you see late 1700 BC, the second derivative instrument came into existence. That was the contracts which were purely written agreements. Again, these contracts were also embossed on clay. Again, the contracts were to buy and sell, exchange of certain goods. And the Greek philosopher Thales is the first person to introduce options. He was a person who was cultivating olives, and he proposed the put option to sell olives because he was an olive cultivator. He introduced the concept of put option. You can ask a question, does these names of forward or future existed those days? No, we didn't have such terms which were used those days. All these terms evolved only in the late 1800s. Earlier, we didn't have such terms. During the Middle Age, that was the ancient history. During the Middle Age, in the 13th century, the first type of a contract, type of an instrument, financial asset, which was issued was by the government of Italy, who issued Monte shares. The shares were issued to the public, as a promise to repay in the future. This Monte shares were used instead of currencies by the people of Italy, and the value of the currency varied from one place to the other. The place where the currencies were issued, from city to city, the value differed. So this is again called as one important financial asset or instrument which had the nature of a derivative instrument. So, because the contract is between the government and the public, when I use it as currency to pay for against goods or commodities or services, then the value of the currency is dependent on the underlying asset. So this is again considered as a derivative instrument. Then came into existence was the fair letters, which was by the Republic of Venice, where fair letters were issued. It is something similar to letter of credit. How do we have letter of credit? Similarly, fair letters were issued by the Republic of Venice. Then finally, Belgium. In Belgium, used bills of exchange, the commercial bills, as a promise for the real estate market. Belgium was the first country to use commercial bills or bill of exchange for the real estate market, in the real estate market. So this is how the Middle Age history started. If you look at the later 1930s, during the Middle Age, Japan was the first country to introduce something called as the rice vouchers in exchange of cash. So I pay cash and I get rice vouchers, and I use the rice vouchers to procure rice in the future date. So Japan was the first country to introduce rice vouchers. And they also established a rice exchange called Dojima Rice Exchange, which was one of the first official exchange which enhanced the trading of rice vouchers. In order to, they felt uncertainty in supply and demand of rice and cultivation of rice. So wherein rice vouchers were introduced, and Dojima Rice Exchange became the first formal exchange to facilitate this particular function. And there were two different contracts that time which were traded. The first contract was agreement between the rice was sold against the rice voucher. That was the first type of a contract. The second type of a contract, the rice trading took place in books of accounts. Like, it took place in books. It was not a physical contract. It took place where how we have the exchanges, what we call it as futures market today. An exchange is there. I go there. I enter into a. And on a date, when the date of maturity comes, the clearing house comes into picture, to clear the contracts and do the settlement activity. So that kind of a theme was prevailing in the second type of a contract, whereas the first contract was only rice vouchers. So we can say Japanese were introduced this kind of a culture during late 1700s. Coming to the modern history. So this is the prime period when actual derivatives took its the derivative market took its actual picture. In US during the 1800s, there was a huge uncertainty which was prevailing for the agricultural products. The demand for agriculture in the US market, that resulted for developing an exchange called the Chicago Board of Trade, a formal exchange which was established in order to facilitate trading in agricultural commodities with help of forward contracts. So during 1800s, when Chicago Board of Trade, an official exchange was established, it was established with the purpose to trade on agricultural commodities, and the type of contracts were only forwards. Later, in 1865, future agreements were also introduced in this particular market, in this particular exchange. The first instrument was forward, and the next followed by futures. And basically, the products which are traded in food grains, like dairy food grains like wheat, rice, soya bean. These were food grains which were traded, and dairy products were also an important aspect of this particular market. This Chicago Board of Trade is one of the largest commodity exchange, which was established in 1848 with a moral responsibility to help farmers and consumers to manage the risk or risk against uncertainty in prices of the agricultural commodity. So it was established in 1848. Main prime aim or objective of this Chicago Board of Option Trade was to help support farmers and consumers. They wanted to safeguard farmers as well as consumer against uncertainty in agricultural product supply or demand as well as the prices. So originally, as I told you earlier, wheat, soya bean, and all these were the products, corn, rice, all these were products which were traded. And later, slowly other products like, bullions, that is gold and silver, treasury bonds, slowly other range of products were also brought. Today, this Chicago Board of Trade is called as CME. It has become a part of CME Group, that is Chicago Mercantile Group. Though it has become a part of it, the first initial exchange, which commodity exchange, which was established for this, was Chicago Board of Trade, and it was the world's largest commodity exchange. And earlier days, when this particular exchange was introduced, the open outcry system of trading was followed. That is, trading was not done through electronic platform. It was an open trading system. But today, after 1992, the trading platform has been converted into electronic, and today we see all electronic trading happening in that particular exchange. Then you have the Chicago Board of Exchange. So it was earlier called as CBOE, that is Chicago Board of Option Exchange, till 2007. The name is CBOE Option Exchange. This is the name. This exchange was introduced in the year 1973. This was the first exchange which was introduced to deal with option contracts. The option, the type of a derivative instrument called the options were introduced through this particular market, and this is again one of the most popular exchanges across the globe. So you can, this particular, there is an index called the volatility index. We generally call it as VIX, which is constructed based on the option contracts of an underlying asset. So the underlying asset is nothing but S&P 500. Based on the option contracts dealt on that underlying asset, an index is being developed, and this index is identified as a measure of performance. It's a measure of perceived fear or positiveness perceived by the investors. So if the volatility index is considered to be an index which talks about what is the future, like what is the future, how investors perceive the financial market to move ahead. So based on that perception, this index was created. This index was developed based on the underlying asset called S&P 500 option contracts. So this is one widely used volatility index for majority of comparative studies. Major index used is the volatility index, and every country, every stock exchange has their own index. In India, you have the National Stock Exchange India Volatility Index, which is constructed purely based on the methodology on which VIX was framed. India VIX is also developed. So coming to the size of the derivative market, the global futures and options market, the trading, the number of contracts traded has grown by 32%, and which amounted to 21.99 billion contracts. All these are traded contracts. We don't have the value of the contracts. We generally don't consider. The market size is measured based on the number of contracts which are traded. So 21.9 billion contracts has been traded till the mid of 2020 across the globe. We are not talking about any one country. And the total number of open interest contracts were around 915 million. You can ask me, what is open interest contracts? Open interest contracts are those on which the underlying asset is not settled. settled, or on the day that every day there are new entries, contracts are entered, either option, be it option or future, new contracts are coming into picture. So when for a contract for whose asset is not settled, the contract is not yet closed, that is generally called as open interest contracts, and the total amount of open interest contracts is assumed as 915 million. This is mid of 2020. If you look at the outbreak of COVID, during the first quarter of 2020, there was 11.4 billion contracts, whereas it slipped down to 10.4 during the second quarter. That is as a result of COVID outbreak. So whenever there is a new shock, there are negative shock, there is a possibility that there is a fall in the derivative market. I mean, the fall in the quantum of investments coming to this market. So against the largest trading volume is generally felt in America and the Latin America. These are Asia Pacific region. These are some countries where you will see large amount of trading happening in the derivative market. So coming to the size across exchanges, if you look at I told you Chicago Mercantile Group is the world's largest group in terms of quantum of contracts traded. That was till 2018. Since 2019, the National Stock Exchange of India has recorded as the largest exchange in terms of number of contracts traded in the derivative market. If you take the mid of 2020, 3.73 billion contracts were traded in National Stock Exchange. And if you see, the open interest contracts amounted to 8 million, closely to 9 million contracts. If you look at the CME Group, the largest exchange amounted to 2.78 billion. You can see the difference. It is 3.7 billion, whereas the Chicago Mercantile Group is only 2.7 billion. B3 is a Brazilian exchange, derivative exchange, where the trading volume is recorded as 2.73 billion, and the Intercontinental Exchange of US has recorded 1.4 billion contracts during the mid of 2020. So first half of 2020 is the results. Coming to the exchanges, the quantum volume of trade by these exchanges during the year 2019, if you see, as I told you, NSE has started to rank first in terms of the number of contracts traded in the derivative market with 5.9 billion contracts during the year 2019, and CME Group with 4.8, and slowly you can see the other indexes. Eurex is the European exchange European exchange, based on the underlying assets. So all this time I was telling you about the countries based on the region which exchange was leading. Now looking at the underlying asset perspective across the derivatives market, equity index, the amount of contracts entered on equity index alone amounts to 12.45 billion contracts. This is as of 2019. As of 2019, the number of contracts in the equity indexes were very high when compared to the other sectors. Then followed by interest rate derivatives, which were amounted to 4.7 billion contracts, and then followed by the energy futures and options, which amounted to 2.5 billion contracts. Your agricultural commodity futures and options amounted to 1.7. If you look at the era evolution, agricultural commodities were the first. But today, if you see indexes, equity indexes has ranked as first in terms of number of contracts getting traded. And precious and non-precious metal amounted to 1.4 billion, and trading of other was amounted to 582.3 million contracts. So with this information, I would like to close my presentation, and I am now open for the queries.
Hello.